Hey guys, what's going on? Hope everybody's having a good day out there today. Welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. And if you're a longtime subscriber, much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and hope you guys can learn a few things here from some of the tips I share with you guys. Today, what we're going to talk about, we're going to give a beginner's, sort of a beginning, intermediate discussion seminar on how to choose the right size of fishing line for a lot of different applications. And I'm going to give you guys a really good foundation if you're not familiar with what to use under certain conditions and with certain baits. And I think it's going to help you not only get more bites, but I think it's going to help you land more of those bites that you get. Real quick, before we get started, just want to remind everybody, if any of y'all is interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, I take people out on Table Rock Lake, Stockton Lake, some of the Southwest Missouri lakes. Just shoot me a message, a private message on my Facebook page, Randy Blockett Professional Angler, and I'll give you the details on that. Much appreciated. Okay, guys, let's talk about fishing line here. Basically, the size under different conditions. And what I want to try to do is I want to try to go through a lot of different scenarios here to sort of give you a feel for what you need to do, especially if you don't know much about, bass fishing, or maybe you're learning in the process of that and don't really know what to use for what situation. The key on choosing the right fishing line, and like I said, the line that I use, guys, I use 100% of the time, I use Seaguar fluorocarbon fishing line. I will use the Smackdown, the Seaguar Smackdown braid, and under certain situations, I'll use just a generic monofilament, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I'm going to guess 95% of my fishing is with the Seaguar Invisex fluorocarbon line. I've just found that is the best overall line for a wide range of conditions. Fluorocarbon line, in my opinion, is the best line to use most of the time because it has a lot of different properties. But anyway, there's a couple considerations that you need to take into thought before you choose it, because the size of fishing line that you need, the determination about what size, is based upon a couple of different things. It's based upon the type of cover that you're fishing, as far as how heavy the cover is or how thick it is. It's based upon the water clarity, and it's based upon the lure that you're using. Those are the three factors that you need to sort of consider before choosing it. So in general, I'm going to run through this in sort of a basic level because there's variations to this. But normally, let's talk a little bit about light to heavy line. The times that I use light line, and when I'm talking about light line, I consider it, say, 6, 8, and 10 pound test line. That's what sort of the 3 pound test I can consider light line. Most of the time when I'm using those line sizes, I'm dealing with some type of a finesse application or some type of a cranking or jerkbait application for the most part. If I'm fishing baits like a wacky rig, a shaky head, a Ned rig, a drop shot, something like that, normally I'm using 6 to 8 pound test line, because in those situations, I'm fishing a lot of open water, I'm fishing clear water, so I don't need a lot of strength out of my line, but I do need the line to be invisible, and I do need the line to not impede the action of the bait. So on those finessey type baits like that you're fishing on the bottom, try to stick with 6, 8, or 10 pound test line. You will also find that for the most part, those lines are the ones you use on a spinning reel. I use straight fluorocarbon on my spinning reel, guys. I don't use braided fluorocarbon, so remember that when we're talking about this. And if you're one of those people that like to use braided fluorocarbon, you can still go with the same pound test leader that I'm talking about. Most of the guys use like a 15 to 20 pound test braided line, main line if they're using spinning, but you can still apply this to your leader line. So like I said, the finessey tactics, that's what you want the light lines for. Also, I use a lot of 8 and 10 pound test line with my jerk baits. Actually 6 too, 6, 8, and 10 pound test line with my jerk baits. Those line categories will allow you to get that bait deeper. They allow you to make longer casts. And I'm going to say probably 50% of the time I'm using 8 pound test fluorocarbon Seaguar with jerk baits. 50% of the time I'm using 6 pound test. Another application for it that I use a lot is crankbaits. I do a lot of crankbait fishing on 8 and 10 pound test fluorocarbon line. Those are the crankbaits that are usually smaller. They're a lot of times flat side crankbaits, little finessey crankbaits, and the lighter line not only allows me to get the depth out of that bait, but allows me to make a longer cast with it. Now, stepping up in line tests, let's go to like 12 and 15 pound tests, Seaguar fluorocarbon. Those I'll put that into the mid-range category. The 12 and 15 pound test, again, it has a different lure category. Most of the time when I'm fishing 12 or 15 pound tests, I'm still not concerned about like getting into real thick cover with it, because even though those are stronger lines, they're not strong enough for a lot of super heavy cover. So the times that I'm using 12 to 15 pound tests fluorocarbon are usually a lot of crankbait fishing, or something like casting a plastic worm, or a soft plastic stick bait, or dragging a football head jig, something like that. 12 to 15 pound test line is one of my favorite, or some of my favorite line sizes to fish a variety of crankbaits on. I'll fish them on a lot of square bill crankbaits. I'll fish them on a lot of medium running crankbaits, and even the deep crankbaits. A lot of the deep diving crankbaits I'll fish on 15 pound test fluorocarbon. It allows you that extra strength that you need to handle a bigger bait, yet the 12 and 15 pound test still allows that bait to get down to its maximum range. Also, I'll cast the finesse jig a lot, like a small jig on 12 or 15 pound test line. A lot of my soft plastic stick baits, maybe casting Texas rig plastic worms, even big ones like even 10-inch worms on 12 or 15 pound test. And 15 pound test is one of my favorite sizes to use on a football head jig. So that's sort of the category there. Now, when we're talking about 17, 20, and 25 pound test, 25 pound test is the heaviest I go in fluorocarbon. The 17, 20, and 25 are the power fishing techniques. These are the ones that I'm using in heavy cover a lot. And also, if I'm using larger baits, sometimes I'll use 17, 20, 25 pound test line on a square bill crankbait. Like if I'm fishing around shallow cover, like lay down logs where I don't need the bait to get very deep, that's a good pound test for them. Most all of my spinnerbait fishing, regardless of the size of spinnerbait, is on a combination of 17, 20, and 25 pound tests. And I'll let the weight of the spinnerbait determine that. If I'm using like a little 1/4 ounce spinnerbait, I'll use 17 pound test. If I'm using like a 1 ounce spinnerbait, I may go up to 25 pound test. Also, 17, 20, 25 pound test is what you want to use for your pitching and flipping. If you're pitching around docks or laydowns or grass or flooded trees, stumps, whatever, those are the 3 pound test lines that will work the best, because they are powerful lines, yet they are still small enough in diameter where they don't impede the action of the bait. And the size of line that I use for my pitching and flipping depends upon, again, how thick the cover is and how clear the water is. So if I'm fishing, flipping flooded bushes and the water visibility is 12 inches, I'll go into 25 pound test line. But if I'm flipping, say I'm flipping a creature bait around dock pilings and the water visibility is 3 or 4 feet deep, I may go to 17 pound test. So you have to sort of balance the water clarity with the type of cover. So that's the deal on fluorocarbon. Now the braided line, the only times I use the braided line like the Seaguar Smackdown is if I'm pitching and flipping a 1 ounce sinker in matted vegetation. I'll use 50 to 65 pound test braided line. And also sometimes if I'm fishing a frog or a buzzbait, I'll go with 50 pound test braided line. Braided line, guys, is you want to use it when you're not concerned about the fish seeing the line, because braided line is more visible and you need maximum power. So the times that I use that are the extreme power fishing technique times, and that's pretty limited to that. So I've got a small limitation of times that I use braided fluorocarbon. And the window that I do use monofilament line, just generic monofilament, is if I'm fishing a topwater lure. Topwater lures, if you're using a topwater like a walking topwater or a popper, fluorocarbon line will sink, and it actually sinks the nose of that topwater down. So fluorocarbon is not a good choice for topwaters. You want to use monofilament line. Some people like braid. I don't like braid for topwater because the braid gets caught up real easy on the hooks, and also it's a little bit more visible. So I will use monofilament for that. So basically, guys, that's just an overview. So it gives you guys a good foundation of where to start out with choosing your pound test line. You always the thing that you're always looking for, guys, is you're looking for that balance of the lightest line that you can go by, yet the line that will allow you to efficiently fish the cover with not getting broke off. Because the lighter the line you go to, the more strikes you're going to get, but you don't want to go so light that you bust off fish in heavy cover. So there's a balancing act there. So hope that helps out, guys. I think it's a good rule of thumb. I think it will help you guys get more bites and land some more fish. And if you guys haven't had a chance to go by, and you can get the Seaguar InvizX fluorocarbon or the Seaguar Tatsu that I fish. You can get it at Baitworks in Springfield, Missouri. I'll include the link in the description. I think you guys will be really happy with that product. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.